Hey everyone, welcome to Dreamhouse Nightmare. I'm Adam, and today we're going to be talking about the 1987 horror film Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night II. This film was directed by Bruce Pittman and written by Ron Oliver. But before we get into it, I want to say if you like my channel and you like the content that I make, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It definitely helps small-time creators out like myself get our stuff out there for people to discover and be put in the algorithm. So, let's get into it. Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night II from 1987 is a supernatural horror film about Mary Lou Maloney, a 1957 prom queen who accidentally burns to death at her senior prom. 30 years later, her vengeful spirit escapes and possesses a modern high school student named Vicki Carpenter to terrorize Hamilton High and get revenge on the boy responsible. It's a mix of fun horror mixed with hints of comedy, mixed with campy vibes, and 1980s visuals, aesthetics, and top-notch special effects for that time that has even held up by today's standards, or at least in my opinion. The film builds real tension through relationships and the possession of Vicki, and the film even introduces Vicki Carpenter's character as vulnerable, the good girl, who doesn't even wear makeup. Played by talented actress Wendy Lyon, her character is having breakfast with her parents Walt and Virginia, portrayed by Wendell Smith and Judy Mabe. Prom is coming up, and Vicki wants to buy a new dress. Her father Walt is more than willing to give her some money to buy a new dress for prom. However, her mother Virginia isn't having it. She immediately shuts it down by saying that she still co-signs the checks and that her green dress will be just fine for prom. Vicki is clearly upset and leaves for school, kissing her father goodbye and being cold towards her mother, which is understandable. The relationship between Vicki and her mother throughout the film stays cold. Her mother is hateful and unloving, judgmental, especially towards Vicki's boyfriend. At one point, Vicki is knocked out by a volleyball at school, and her boyfriend Craig takes her home, and her father invites Craig in for dinner, and her mother says that Vicki doesn't need guests, that she just needs a little time with the Lord, and sends her daughter, who probably got a concussion, to confession at the church. It's clear why Vicki's mother is cold to her, and it's because she has a boyfriend who rides a motorcycle, and with the times and the way people would think back then, she sees him as a punk, and when he's actually a gentleman, sweet, loving, and kind to Vicki. Vicki's rivalry is Kelly, played by the talented actress Terry Hawks. She is a spoiled brat who puts everyone down and thinks that she's going to be the prom queen no matter what. The tension builds between Vicki and Kelly throughout the film, with Kelly given the mean and sarcastic and even downright cruel dialogue towards everyone, especially Vicki, building the tension between the rivalries. Since Vicki isn't able to get the money for her dress from her parents, she decides to go to the prop room looking through the gowns and looking for something just to wear, but stumbles upon a trunk that has Mary Lou's crown and other things from the tragic 1957 prom queen that went up in flames. When she opens the trunk, she sets Mary Lou's spirit free. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In the beginning of the film, we see that Mary Lou's date is Billy, but she hooks up with Cooper behind the stage. Billy's dad is principal during the 1957 incident, but Billy grows up to follow in his dad's footsteps as principal of Hamilton High. Cooper, the guy hooking up with Mary Lou, so affected, I guess, by what happened to Mary Lou, became Father Cooper, and the film builds tension between everyone, even Billy and Cooper. Vicki starts to spiral as she becomes possessed by Mary Lou, and when Mary Lou kills Jessica, her best friend, it makes Vicki very vulnerable, bothered, to where people think that she's just going through stress, masking possession as stress. Billy and Cooper start to see that something is majorly wrong with Vicki and notices that there's a connection between Mary Lou, but everyone tends to just disregard this, at least for a while. Monica, Vicki's other best friend, notices it, and the class clown Josh, who actually calls it, saying that she's possessed, Linda Blair style. Throughout the film, Vicki's reality is altered, and there are key scenes that stand out in the film. A lunchroom scene where Vicki's reality sees the world as if it had been stuck in 1957, but aged horribly, with roaches everywhere, and like everyone is a prisoner in a different reality. The scene ends with her running into the hallway and then being assaulted by a punk who is calling her Mary Lou. The special effects in the film are truly something special. The film doesn't rely on gore and instead relies on atmosphere, scenes of altered reality, tension, and when it does deliver the special effects, even some of the grueling scenes where Mary Lou comes back, it still doesn't rely on gore, and instead it really sets up a good plot, dynamic characters, and good characterization. Actress Wendy Lyon is a massive standout in the film. Some people may even recognize her from the film Shape of Water. Her acting ability is perfect. She's likable. She plays innocent so well, and even when she's possessed by Mary Lou's promiscuous behavior is spot on, showing that Wendy Lyon is an actress who can play her co-star on-screen persona perfectly with depth to the role where you're rooting for her and you feel for her. A lot of people compare this film to the original Prom Night. The original Prom Night was a film that I didn't appreciate until I was older, and some might even call the original Prom Night a sleepy slasher or boring. I've definitely learned to love it as I've gotten older, and to me the comparison here is Stephen King's Carrie versus Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. It definitely took total inspiration with the film and the innocent, vulnerable female lead, the overly religious mother, the fire that killed Mary Lou at her prom, and the fire that burned up and killed Carrie's classmates in the film Carrie. There's a lot of similarities in both Prom Night 2 and Carrie, but it's executed in a way that also is really different, and it's its own thing in each film, using similar elements. I think it's also good to note that this film was never meant to be a sequel. It was meant to be called The Haunting of Hamilton High, and the film was purchased and marketed as a sequel to Prom Night. What's interesting is, even though it was not intended to be a sequel, actor Brock Simpson is the only actor to appear in all 4 of the original Prom Night films.
Go away. This is my room.
So there is some pretty interesting trivia on this film, and I want to go over first the trivia that they have on IMDb for it. So the first trivia that they have is it says the phone number that Mary Lou writes on the confessional booth for a good time, call Mary Lou at da da da, was actually screenwriter Ron Oliver's home phone number at the time, but no one ever actually called. The second thing they have on here is it says almost every character in the film shares the last name with a cult film director, especially horror directors, such as Wes Craven, Stephen King, George A. Romero, Todd Browning, Joe Dante, John Carpenter, John Waters, and Frank Henenlotter. Then it says, written and filmed as The Haunting of Hamilton High. The title was changed to Hello Mary Lou Prom Night II by Samuel Goldwyn Company, who purchased it and decided to market it as a sequel. The similarities to the original Prom Night from 1980, such as the name of the school and the line, "It's not who you go with, it's who takes you home," were entirely coincidental. I really do feel like that's pretty interesting that they have like the same lines, it's the same name to the school. It's like it was meant to be part of this franchise. I really kind of feel like The Haunting of Hamilton High should have been its own film, though, and I do think that it would have been a stronger film without being connected to Prom Night. But a lot of people do like the original Prom Night. I personally didn't like it when I first saw it, and it definitely took several years to really gain a respect for it, just because it was a very different type of slasher, in my opinion. Some people find it boring, some people really do love it, and I found it boring as a kid, but as I've gotten older, I do have a respect for it, and I actually do enjoy the film. And then let's see, it says, when tasked with directing reshoots, first-time director Ron Oliver called Wes Craven for some advice on directing a teen horror film. His advice was give them a scare, give them a hard-on, and send them home. Interesting. And one of the positive reviews of the film, the LA Times called it the blue velvet of high school horror films. Interesting. And let's see, we got several more trivia on here. I'm also going to be given some things that I found really interesting as well. Director Bruce Pittman admitted in an interview that the scene with actress Wendy Lyon in the shower and walking around nude in the locker room was purely gratuitous. He said the script originally had her and actress Beverly Henry wearing towels, but he felt the scene would have more of an impact if they both were naked. Henry was hesitant, but agreed only if they shot her from the back and side. She insisted on wearing a towel while being chased. When Pittman discussed it with Lyon, she said, "Let's do it." It was her first and only career nude scene, but he says she was a real pro at it, even though she had to spend 2 days of being shot fully nude from every angle in front of mostly a male crew. And I mean, like, I think it's important to say, like, as long as like your set is extremely professional and you have a closed set where even if the crew is male, as long as you're professional and you don't have absolutely everyone there that doesn't need to be there, I think that's it's good that it's professional. It says, after filming was completed, the executive producer decided that the film didn't work and hired screenwriter Ron Oliver to rewrite and reshoot several sequences for 1 week and $100,000. This included the climax of the locker room death scene, which is an amazing scene. And the way that they did it with the locker, it's incredible. Like, that a film like this really was able to pull that scene off. I also have always felt like the faculty ripped that scene off, because the faculty had a scene where it's in the school, the girl's walking around nude, and obviously it's an alien film, but it definitely reminiscences of Hello Mary Lou Prom Night II, and it is without a doubt a nod to this film. The rocking horse with the tongue scene, which is probably my favorite scene out of this entire movie, and then the chalkboard whirlpool, which is another really good scene. It's probably my second favorite scene in this movie, and it's just incredible and genius how they put together some of these like really other dimension, like it's like an alternate dimension whenever it shows these like the scenes with like the whirlpool or the lunchroom. The lunchroom scene where everything's like an alternate reality, but it's like 1957, but nothing has aged. So it's really interesting to see or hear that they went back and added those, because honestly, that's some of those scenes are key to this film and super important. And I'd have to say that that's probably the best $100,000 that they ever spent on a film. That's amazing. That they had to go back and just add the best scenes into this film. It says, though the movie was filmed in 1987, relics of the movie could still be found at the junior high school where it was filmed. The black paint had covered the windows could still be seen until the windows in the school's library was replaced in early 2001. That's sad. Shouldn't erase history of that. Like, it's, preserve it. So this is in regards to a cameo. The screenwriter Ron Oliver appears as a prom goer who, after crowning, says, "Hey Kelly, how'd you blow it?" Which is, it's a pun in regards to her trying to cheat to win and have Josh fix the ballots for the prom. He is also a server in sunglasses who pours Craig and Vicki's coffee at the diner. Brock Simpson, who does play Josh, is the only actor who appeared in all 4 Prom Night movies. And that's wild to me that he played one of the young kids in the first Prom Night at the beginning of the film, but then he played kind of like a minor character in Prom Night 2, but he's still very present throughout the film, and he is a really cool character. He's like the class clown, but I remember him in part 3, and in part 4, he played like a young priest. So yeah, I find that to be pretty interesting that the film was never meant to be a sequel, but he wound up being in all 4 films. The sequence with Wendy Lyon walking around the locker room fully nude wasn't written as such. In the script, it was implied that she would be wearing a towel. Screenwriter Ron Oliver was startled to see the final scene as it appears. And I mean, in all honesty, though, I really do feel like it was a good move. Like, it's a kill scene. The locker room is a kill scene, but it's also giving gratuitous nudity. It's paced very, very well. And also, it gives a dynamic to Vicki Carpenter's character, which is played by Wendy Lyon. And what I mean by that is, like, she's so innocent looking, and she doesn't wear makeup at the beginning of the film, and then as she's getting possessed, she finds that she's, wearing makeup, and she's a very modest woman in the film, and to see her like that, it was a shock to see her fully nude, and to do that scene. Like, I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, ooh. As a kid, I was like, wow, I just didn't expect that, and you don't expect it. Even today, watching it, I still don't expect her to do it, but she does. So I do think that it was a smart move, and they can say it was gratuitous, but all in all, the scene really works very, very well. I think it adds a level of the possession that's, Mary Lou inside of her, and it's not Vicki anymore, because you see how promiscuous she is acting when she's, not a promiscuous girl to begin with. So I think that was kind of a smart move to do that. Kelly, Terry Hawks, is drinking Diet Pepsi in nearly every scene she appears. And I just have to say that we would probably be best friends, because I drink Diet Pepsi all the time. It's my favorite drink. Mary Lou Maloney is the only character to appear in more than one Prom Night film. But the sad part about that is even though part 3 is so good, and the woman who played Mary Lou in Prom Night 3 was really good, I do have to say that it's sad that Lisa Schrage did not come back for that, because Lisa did such a good job as Mary Lou. Now, again, in Prom Night 3, that actress did a phenomenal job as well, so not to take that away from her, but I kind of wish that, we would have had a little bit more of Lisa Schrage, Mary Lou in there, or even just a few more films. I think would have been, I think it would have been marketable, and I think people would have really loved it. But we've got 4 original films, and we have a remake, so it is what it is, and I wish we had more. Let's see. Although not explicitly stated in the movie, Jess and Monica are also prom queen nominees, along with Vicki and Kelly, hence why Mary Lou targets them. Steve Atkinson, a young Bill Nordham, played by a younger version of Michael Ironside, Bill Nordham. In this movie, they worked again in the same manner in Minefield from 1989. Michael, which is Kelly O'Reilly, and Steve, a young Kellen. Though not explicitly said, the currency and beer shown indicates that Hamilton High is in Canada, where the first and second movies were filmed. Sets were built in a 300,000 square foot closed furniture store in Edmonton, Canada. Interesting. The film draws inspiration from the Stephen King film Carrie from 1976, in which both Carrie White and Mary Lou Mahoney are both prom queens, and both Carrie White and Mary Lou Mahoney are both victims of cruel pranks on prom night. There is still so many more similarities with, the mother being overtly religious, and then also the character being naive and not, and I would have to say vulnerability. And then you see Carrie White. Carrie never wears makeup until she goes to prom, and Wendy Lyon's character, Vicki Carpenter, she doesn't wear makeup until she starts getting possessed. So there is a lot of similarities in the film between the two. And then let's see. The confessional scene was sampled by the death metal band Spawn of Possession on their song Church of Deviants. Never heard of it, but cool. The interiors of the school were shot at Westmount Junior High School in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The house used Vicki's home is about 1 kilometer to east on 125 Street. Interesting. The poster for the film is the main inspiration of the album art for metalcore band Falling in Reverse's 2011 album, The Drug in Me Is You, featuring the lead singer's ex-girlfriend, Mandy, I'm going to call it Murmurs, because we're not going to say that word on here, in a locker room with her arms crossed, a rose between them, wearing a prom dress, tiara, and white gloves. This is really interesting to me, because I recognize Terry Hawks' voice because she was the lead in this, but both Wendy Lyon, Vicki Carpenter, and Terry Hawks, also played Kelly Henenlotter, voiced characters for the English dub of Sailor Moon, which is really, really interesting. And that came on later after this film, because that wasn't until early 90s that they did that. At the beginning of the movie, Holy Trinity Anglican Church in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada is used for the interior shots of the church that show stained glass windows and of the exterior doors in the rain. The church does not have confessionals, however. Most of the interior shots were of St. James Anglican Cathedral in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I mean, it's got beautiful sets throughout this whole movie. I mean, and they have so many different shots, and there's so many different props, and so there's just a lot put into this movie, and a lot of passion clearly went into this. When Monica and Josh are talking about going to prom, they are walking by houses that are 1 block north of Holy Trinity Church, used in the earlier church scene. Okay. When Nornham stops his car in front of the church, he actually stops about half a block away. When he leaves, it is from the front of the church. And let's see. There's one more. This was featured on episode 212 of the comedy podcast How Did This Get Made, with special guests Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. I would watch that. And like to see how they talk about it. One of the other things that I found interesting is how much of this cast I actually love their work. You've got Michael Ironside, which is in my opinion, legend in horror films. And then you have Wendy Lyon, who I feel like she should have did more horror films after this, because I feel like she would have been like the ultimate scream queen. But, we have Louis Ferreira. He was credited as Justin Lewis. He was also in the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Sarah Polley's, husband in the film. At the beginning of the movie, he was the first victim. And I remember watching that movie, and I immediately was like, he was in Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night II. And I watch this movie very often, and I watched this movie growing up so many times. And then it's like when Dawn of the Dead, the remake, came out, I have watched that movie so many times, hundreds of times, because I usually watch it a few times a month, just because I love it so much, and I have for years. And then we have Lisa Schrage. I'm surprised that she didn't do more horror films. To me, she really has that Freddy energy, but in her own way. I'm not saying like she's like a perverted child murderer, if you know what I mean. But like, she's definitely the bitchy bad girl with that like campy vibe that even Freddy has in Nightmare on Elm Street. And, Terry Hawks again, Sailor Moon. I love Sailor Moon. I have loved Sailor Moon for years. I've watched the whole series. I've collected everything I can of Sailor Moon. And I used to be obsessed with Sailor Moon. I was one of those people who had like all the trinkets and gadgets that are ridiculously priced online. And I would have them everywhere in my house. But I sold them off just to downsize on things. But yeah, I mean, all in all, the cast is so good in this, and I feel like that's just interesting with some of those. Like Wendy Lyon played in The Shape of Water, and I feel like that's the only other credit that I ever saw her in. I know she's done more. I just never visited some of those projects, but The Shape of Water, she played a receptionist in. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so there is some trivia for Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night II. So my final thoughts on Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night II is that if you're a horror fan, you should definitely check this film out. And you don't have to watch part 1 to watch part 2, but you definitely should watch part 3, since it's a continuation of Mary Lou's story. Part 4 for me is just a huge guilty pleasure. I love part 4. And part 1, it definitely took some time to learn to love that film and to appreciate it. and it's definitely the weaker film out of the franchise, which is weird because usually the first film is the strongest. But it has a solid cast throughout the whole franchise, and then we also have a remake of Prom Night with Brittany Snow that came out in 2008. And I remember going to theaters and watching that one, and I was so excited for it. But for Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, I definitely have to give it a 10 out of 10. I love everything about it. And I also love the sequels, and I love the vibe. I love the writing, the characters, the setup. Everything in this movie I absolutely love. So I'm definitely going to give it a 10 out of 10 and highly recommend it to all horror fans.
See you later, alligator.
No.